Another story is breaking right now. A senior U.S. military official tells CNN U.S. airstrikes have now killed 3 ISIS leaders. 2 of them are described as top-level officials. Mr. Chairman, what can you tell us about these high-level officials? Big deal, little deal?
Big deal. This is, they are high-level. This is a serious advance. It'd be nice to hit al-Baghdadi, but I must say this is important.
The top leader, al-Baghdadi, he's still around.
He's still around, but this is important. What is equally important is that we expand this air cover, and that we get the weapons to the Kurdish forces, to the Free Syrian Army, and so forth, so that those who are recruiting into ISIS see that ISIS is actually losing on the battlefield. They will replace the senior management, in their organization, but for the recruitment purposes, what we really need to see is them rolled back on the ground, and we haven't seen that yet.
Reuters is reporting, I found this, you probably know this, 97%, they say, they did a check, of all the December airstrikes against ISIS in Syria and Iraq were done by the United States. The allies did 3%. What's going on here? Because originally we thought these allies were really going to be major players.
Well, more of the same. It turns out that the U.S. leadership is very, very important, but also it turns out that we've got to keep the pressure up on the allies to do their part of the heavy lift. And so I think it's discouraging, but it's not unlike previous experience.
Yeah, that's what I remember happening early on. All right, let's talk a little bit about this other horrific story. A mass grave with 230 bodies were discovered in Syria. It's horrific. And I guess the question is, these airstrikes that are going, is it enough? Because it looks like ISIS is still around and very much a player.
There's the possibility of using sort of an Arab League, using those on the ground who could go in western Iraq and help tribes such as these. Now, this particular tribe in Syria has lost over 900 of its men in combat. If you look at the tribes in Anbar province that in the past have fought against al-Qaeda, those particular tribes need to be approached and supported. Jordanian forces and others could do that. But the United States needs to be more engaged with their power to give the kind of support that would allow not just the Jordanians, but again, the Kurds, Free Syrian Army, and so far we've been lackluster in encouraging.
So this is going to be a long, drawn-out battle, this war against ISIS.
And unfortunately, the longer it goes on, the longer we wait in terms of turning the tide, the more recruits they're going to get from foreign fighters, and the more expertise those foreign fighters will get in country.
Let me pick your brain on Cuba for a moment. The White House today, intriguingly, not necessarily ruling out an invitation to invite the Cuban President Raul Castro to come to Washington to meet with the President of the United States. Yesterday, President Obama said he's not ruling out a visit to Havana during his final 2 years. This is pretty breathtaking what's going on right now. All of a sudden, this effort to normalize relations between the United States and Cuba. Can you imagine Raul Castro coming to the Oval Office, President Obama going to Havana?
Well, here's what I would ask the President to say as part of these negotiations before that happens. I would ask him to say to Raul Castro, let's work this out so that your workers, instead of getting 5% of their paycheck and the money going into, the account that your government controls, let's work it out so that the workers are directly paid by the U.S. firms that go down there. If you do that, you can frankly get not only engagement, but you can get the changes that I think the administration wants in terms of liberalization of trade. But it should be dependent upon actually empowering the Cuban workers, just as we did in Vietnam, to make certain that the money, the checks, no longer went to Hanoi, but instead went to the workers. This is the next step that should be taken.
All right. Chairman Royce, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Chairman